welcome. We've been fielding some interesting questions already on the difference between optimism and positive thinking, and the need for young people to have optimism. And we are so grateful that you're joining us today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Everyone who visits the Centre for Optimism gets the same question. Victor Dominello, what makes you optimistic?
Life itself. What a great joy it is to just to wake up and watch a sunrise, have the day with loved ones. It is just, we're here on this planet for a microsecond. In real terms, it's a gift, it's a joy. So, I'm optimistic about, enjoying life to the fullest.
We've just done a week of joy and optimism with a Finnish organisation called the Art and Science of Joy. And I think you nail it. Those who are positive and optimistic experience more joy. But I think what people are curious about, Victor, is, politics is a tough game. And there's lots of campaign managers and the like who operate in a time of pessimism. So how do you maintain your personal optimism in such a tough game, surrounded by many cynics?
Great question, Victor. So I've got a number of sayings or quotes that I try to live by. One of my favorites is Eleanor Roosevelt. And she said, I don't want to butcher what she said, but she said something to the effect that, big minds talk about ideas, medium minds talk about events, small minds talk about people, i.e. gossip. In politics, there's a lot of gossip, quite frankly. There's also a lot of talk about, oh, this is what happened in the football, or this is what happened here, or this is what happened there, i.e. the event type thing. But it's the ideas that are really inspiring, because when you get politicians or anybody in a room to talk about ideas, that's when you really elevate. And because generally people are good people and they want the best. They want a better future. And even if they see a dark future, you can say, well, how do we make that brighter? And that's the realm of ideas. So if you want an optimistic forum, talk about ideas, because I can guarantee you, if you just keep talking about people, eventually you'll get back down to what he said, what she said, what they're wearing, and it's pretty small stuff.
Yeah, that's why I wear bright spectacles. It's much easier just to have the optimism up front. Now, we've got a great question from one of your fans and one of our fans who recently travelled down from New South Wales to join an event of ours in Melbourne. And she said, my question to the Minister is to ask how he led a culture of optimism from the political level to people on the ground during the bushfires and then COVID. Victor, was always present in the tough times with his colleague Andrew Constance. At the same time, he had a very public case of Bell's palsy. I think, you appeared on television and people said, oh, well, we think you've got a condition. But throughout this time, Leanne says, Victor remained optimistic, present and available. So she wants to know how you, as an individual, manage to communicate that culture across to the people working with you and then to the community.
Oh, well, Victor, from my perspective, I know me. I know what I'm going through. I know my journey. And I know that even throughout Bell's palsy, sure, it wasn't fun, but I know so many millions more people far, far worse than me, and they never complain. So I get inspiration from the people in wheelchairs, from the people who are blind, the people that don't even get the public attention that I get, that are doing it far, far harder with a far greater smile. They are the true inspirations. I'm nothing. Bell's palsy, in my sense of the word, was a scratch compared to what people went through. I know people with Bell's palsy that had permanent disfigurement. I got lucky. So, I just think, there are so many more people worse off than me. So, I draw inspiration from their optimism, from their positive attitude.
Now, Yeah, one of the things, yesterday I chaired the task force on positive leadership, which brings together quite a few people from Sydney in both in government, in public service, and people are yearning for positive leadership in their workplaces. Dominic Barton, who was the head of McKinsey, says every great leader he's ever met is infectiously optimistic. So you've seen a lot of great leaders, you've worked with leaders. Who are the ones who've inspired you to, levels where you inspire others?
Oh, geez, that's so broad. Obviously, the premiers I've worked for, I've got to do my job in the ministry, but I see firsthand, whether it's Dom or Glad, how hard they work, particularly during the pandemic, like extraordinary. And if you did not have that sense of optimism, it's very hard to wake up in the morning, let me tell you, because they are challenging times. But we always had to work together to say, come on, we've got to get through this. We're going to get through this. We're going to get through this. It's a tough day today, but it's going to get better. It's going to get better. And to have short, medium, long-term goals. So we know that it's going to be tough for the next month, but we know that in the proverbial sense, the sun will rise again. So working with leaders during really difficult times, such as Dom and Glad, they were pretty inspirational. And then on the world stage again, I look at Zelensky and what he's going through in the Ukraine. Like, it's just extraordinary stuff. But the way he manages to motivate his people, just extraordinary. It's inspirational. So people like that, I draw great strength from.
He's very similar to you in many ways. I saw him interviewed by Fareed Zakaria. And Fareed Zakaria said, how can you remain so optimistic in the face of evil? And Zelensky said, because I believe in people, not just the Ukrainian people, but the people of the world who are pressuring their governments to support us.
100%. What did Luther King say? Something about the arc of justice is long, but it bends towards justice. And that's exactly right. I really believe that. And my favorite subject at school is history. I know I'm into technology and data and digital and all that, and I love it. I absolutely love it. But my favorite subject at school was 3-unit history. I did that, and I studied what happened in World War II, etc., etc. I know that we are so much better as a humanity now than we were 100 years ago. And we're going to continue to get better, provided we put the guardrails and provided we continue to respect each other, have a dialogue. We will use data, digital tech to significantly and profoundly reduce suffering. I remember one story, Victor, where I was at the University of Technology, Sydney. This is about 6 years ago, and I've got a fourth cousin that was involved in a horrific football accident. He became quadriplegic. And back then, 5-6 years ago, they had a tennis band around somebody, and they were measuring the brain waves. And basically, it was just basic data mapping. If you thought about, again, I'm bringing it down, but if you did arithmetic in your head, this part of the brain lights up, the wheelchair would move forward. If you thought of the memory, that part of the brain lights up, the wheelchair would go back. If you did poetry, this, music, that. And I thought, wow, look at that. The technology is enabling the blind to see, the deaf to hear, the lame to walk. And we're just starting that journey. So I am optimistic.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely brilliant. And I really wanted to bring up a personal story. And my son and I travelled to Sydney in recent times. We went to your service centre, Services New South Wales in Wynyard. And, you go into a government office, with fairly low expectations. And we walked in, and the young man who called himself the concierge would have been a 7-star hotel. The welcome, sent us to the right queue, the woman, behind the counter, efficient, helpful. So what is the secret to success in creating a government agency delivering services that not only delivers it efficiently, but delivers it with a smile and a sense of customer service?
Well, firstly, I've got to say I am so proud of Service New South Wales and in my agency more broadly. Like, yeah, it's extraordinary. The amount of times I hear something like this is just almost daily. And I think the secret sauce is a positive feedback loop and the genuine dedication to service of the person. These are not transactions that they're dealing with. They genuinely care about people. And what happens when you really care about people? Well, then people respond and they give the positive feedback that you give, and then they feel good. And then they incentivize them to even go better. It is this amazing positive feedback, aspirational circle that you rarely see. And I go into the service centres, and then I go behind the scenes, and this is what they talk about. How do we improve the experience? How do we make people even happier? It's so rare to see, particularly in government. It's just unheard of.
Well, I think people attribute a lot to that, your leadership and then those senior bureaucrats that you've brought in. But it's very much a non-bureaucratic mentality, as you say. It's this feedback loop that says, how can we continuously improve? Now, I know as a minister, and as a member of parliament, you get to visit lots and lots of organisations, and, like your cousin, at UTS and, brain scanning. Yeah. You're retiring from politics. You've made that very public. When you're going to be reminiscing to your grandchildren and great-grandchildren, what are those stories of hope and optimism that really sit there in your head and say, gosh, this has been an interesting part of my life?
Well, firstly, can I just rewind back a bit and say I am just a small part of an amazing team. Sure, I'm the public face, but my most important job is to get even better leaders than me around me. So I've got people like M. Hogan, Greg Wells, Dame Maurice before him, William Murphy, in the agency that are driving the culture of optimism and customer experience. So again, I'm the minister, but it's extraordinary leadership from the team around me. So credit to them. What would I do in a rocking chair in X years' time? I don't spend too much time looking behind me, to be honest. It's an indulgence. I'd rather be speaking to grandkids about the future. And wow, what's on the horizon? Because again, I enjoy history, but I don't enjoy history from a transactional perspective. I enjoy history from a lessons perspective to frame up what we can be doing in the future. So I don't think I'd be looking too far back, because that's about me and that's boring. I'd rather be talking about them and their future, and that's inspiring.
No, that's brilliant. And there was a woman who recently died aged 107 in Shepparton, and she interviewed the year before by a current affair, and she said, I never worry too much about tomorrow because I know the sun's going to rise tomorrow, and I never worry about yesterday because I can't change it. So you touched on the world of data, and you touched on the world of brain scanning. Of course, from our perspective, we're always trying to understand what makes people even more optimistic. But as you look into this future world, of data, of machine learning, of artificial intelligence, of ever better robotics, then what are the things that you see over the horizon in the next 5 to 10 years that are going to make our lives as Australians and global citizens even better?
Well, one of the things that has driven me into for public life, I didn't want to go into politics at first instance. I just was happy being a lawyer, but glad she's very persistent and she convinced my family to go down this path. But once I was here, I really wanted to make a difference, particularly for the vulnerable and those that are suffering. I struggle when people suffer. I can deal with it in my own journey, but when you see kids suffer, other people suffer, that hurts. So I really want to use data and digital and tech to reduce suffering and improve quality of life. So, for me, health is the final frontier. And whether it's aged care, whether it's dementia, whatever it is, we can use tech for the greater good. Can I say this though, that we've got some deeper challenges though. I can't be just completely one-eyed about the future and say, oh, there's no problems here. One of my, I've got authors that I follow on both sides of the spectrum. So I've got Yuval Harari, who's my favorite dystopian. And I've got somebody like Ray Kurzweil, who's Michio Kaku, who's my favorite utopian. Now, we've got to make sure that I believe in the utopia because I believe in the human, but we've got to make sure that we put the safety gates in place to ensure that happens. And if provided we do that around privacy, security, transparency, ethics, inclusion, all the key metrics that make us humane, then the future is 100% bright.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely brilliant. In fact, even the Federal Treasurer yesterday in his 6,000-word essay, talked about realistic optimism, and it's one of the things that we foster. Even though, Pollyanna, there have been great successes in the Pollyanna world, but if we've got an optimism that's grounded in reality and grounded in moving forward whilst making sure we're conscious of the dystopian possibilities, I think that's absolutely brilliant. So probably a broad question again, but you're optimistic personally, and you've got, very well-informed reasons for being optimistic for, government. So what makes you optimistic for New South Wales, for Australia and the world?
Well, again, using a quote that I really love is JFK's. We go to the moon not because it's easy, but because it's hard. Because I think there is that innate challenge inside of each of us to do better, to aspire to better. And we don't want to do it on some easy magic carpet ride. We know that the most inspirational figures in human history are those that toil away at a greater goal, a greater good. And again, the moon landing was no different. That was hard. That was so out there. But it took a lot of people, a lot of hard work, no doubt working 24/7 around the clock, a lot of risk. But look what was achieved for humanity. And that captures the kernel of our trajectory as a species, in my mind. We did not want to go to the moon to blow it up. We wanted to go to the moon to expand our mind and expand our horizons. And I think that's why innately that we should all be optimistic. And even now, the things that we're doing around tech, it's just extraordinary. Like you asked me, what excites me? The stuff that we're doing with AI to identify cancers, the stuff that we're doing with AI in relation to mapping of the human genome, so that we're starting to understand genetics and getting ahead of some really deep suffering. This is really promising. And again, I think by the end of this decade, and hopefully definitely deeper into the next, we're going to have far, far more understanding around mental health. We're pretty much nailed the heart. The heart's a pump. That's pretty mechanical. The brain's a lot harder. It's a circuit board. But we're starting to understand it in ways we've never done before. So, I'm very optimistic around this.
Yeah, Bill Gates, of course, has just been in Sydney and Melbourne, and he often talks about, look, we've defeated polio now. Yeah. We've halved the malaria death rate this century. Dementia, we're starting to understand the causes and better treatments. And of course, heart disease and cancer. I mean, we're, defeating cancers that we thought, in fact, we've even got vaccines against some forms of cancer. So no, you've nailed it. So look, our members, we've got several hundred members in New South Wales and supporters, and they love you. So the last question I've got for you from them, because they don't want to lose you, What's next for Victor Dominello?
I hope I'm not going anywhere. I still want to, I'm not going anywhere in particular.
Well, I think they want you walking the streets of Sydney so they can, see you. So what's next for you?
Whatever the universe wants. So, I think I'm here. I'm not here. There's once saying that, I don't want to have a gold coffin. That doesn't give me joy. I want to be, to continue on the public mission of, being a champion for change, for positive change. I've got a lot of lessons and learnings to give. So hopefully I can still be part of that public discourse, but, in the real world rather than in the political bubble. But again, like if the universe wants me to do something more in relation to this journey, I'd be grateful, but I'll see how that plays out.
Well, Victor, you've got us as a fan club. So if there's anything we can do to help amplify your positive, futuristic, utopian messages to the world after you retire from politics, you've got us as strong supporters. So thank you in such a busy time, taking your time with the Centre for Optimism, and we wish you all the best. Thank you, Victor.
And to you as well, Victor. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Well, we hope you enjoyed that episode of our Positive Leadership series at the Centre for Optimism. If you'd like to become involved, just sign up at centreforoptimism.com, and there's literally hundreds of pages of interesting material on the website as well. Wishing you a splendid day. Optimism always.